Lewis Hamilton's first official day with the Ferrari team has finally arrived, and he can begin, along with his new team, to work on all of the final details regarding his run plans, not only for testing before the launch of the 2025 car, but of course pre-season testing in Bahrain and of course beyond. And of course, Ferrari and Hamilton are not going to miss any sort of opportunity to have a publication or a photo shoot, particularly for his first official arrival day. So have a look at these photos. Now, of course, there is a lot to be done, and at around 11:30 this morning, Hamilton's first meeting with the team begun, and is essentially to make all of the arrangements for what is going to be unfolding throughout this week, and of course for the remainder of this month and next. So to begin with, Hamilton has, through a rumour, allegedly been given a bespoke steering wheel specifically set up for the way in which he is accustomed to. And of course we're talking about the steering wheel he used throughout his time in Mercedes, who he himself had a huge hand in designing and putting all of the button layout and features within that. And this was a rumor started unofficially from an unverified source on Twitter, but it was one nonetheless which I found intriguing, just because of the fact that there's a lot of effort to put into it. But of course, with a 7-time world champion comes a lot of influence. Now, Hamilton will be getting his first taste of the Ferrari simulator at some point today as well, and I'm sure tomorrow, and getting to meet his engineers for kind of proper these next couple of days before he heads out onto the Fiorano racetrack that Ferrari owned this Wednesday. And I will be covering that on the channel through a video, hopefully, that I will be able to publish. Now, of course, I am myself going to be going out to Maranello in February to film the unveiling of the 2025 Ferrari car. And I'm going to be running a competition for all my subscribers on the channel. And what you are in the chance of winning simply is, hopefully, if I can get Hamilton or Leclerc or both of them to sign this limited edition Monza livery from last year t-shirt. And yeah, basically all you've got to do is be subscribed when that video is unveiled in February of the new 2025 car. All you have to do is leave a like in the video and leave a comment, and then the winner will be put into the description of that video a week afterwards. So yeah, be on the lookout for that as and when it happens. But of course, let's get back to the big day and what Hamilton will be doing throughout this first week. Now, as for what Lewis will be getting up to on his first day, Ferrari are generally very secretive on that matter when it comes to new arrivals. Now, there are other teams that have set a precedence and examples for us to go off of with regards to that. So let's get right into that right now. So, apart from being shown around both complexes that are based within Maranello, there is of course going to be the introduction to all of the engineers and design departments, but even more important than that is of course his race engineers, all of the engineers from which he is going to be working extremely closely with for the next 3 years, possibly longer, with Ferrari. And of course it's all going to be extremely important to get this initial phase, this initial bedding in period with all of the engineers, in terms of making sure the terminology between one another is like synced together, so they have a clear and precise understanding of what they need to be speaking in terms of vocabulary. Because of course we cannot forget, Lewis has spent the best part of over a decade now with Mercedes, and the terminology between Ferrari and Mercedes is very much a different kettle of fish. Not only of course is the language barrier going to be an issue, because quite naturally they're all Italian, so English is not their mother tongue. So that is another obstacle that they have to overcome. And it's all about making sure that they have this right bond and the right relationship with one another. And of course, this is going to be very important once we get to that first run in a Ferrari car at Fiorano later on in January. Again, another thing which is going to be extremely important will of course be his first seat fit. I would say it would be in either a mock-up of the 25 chassis, or if they've kind of gotten it to a point of where they've confirmed it and they've homologated it, that they will have the first chassis for 2025 ready for Lewis to sit in, and then of course to mold the seat. And there's a huge variety of things that they'll need to get correct with it on its first attempt. This comes from the comfortability factor for Lewis. Of course, he's a little bit older, he's no spring chicken anymore, and so there's probably a little bit of aches and pains through certain parts of his back and lower, backside and these sorts of things. So making sure the comfortability and making sure they're very tightly closed in, but not too tight that it's suffocating, is very important. And then of course, just the positioning within the chassis and the visibility from which every Formula One driver has to deal with now as a result of the introduction of the halo, because visibility for drivers is now at a lower level than it's ever been in Formula One as a result. So it's very important that everything is created and designed around Lewis's preferences in and around that particular area. Now, sticking with first time things within Ferrari, another thing which I'm sure a lot of people will be interested in, and potentially if you've been around Formula One for long enough like myself, you will remember when Lewis joined Mercedes, he asked the designers to come up with a specific different steering wheel for himself over that of what the team had been using for the previous seasons there. And this was in two factors. One was the button layout of his steering wheel. He wanted a more simplistic design with less buttons from which to have to make changes. But second of all to all of that was the actual thickness of the steering wheel as well. So if you see on the screen, you will see his design versus that of Rosberg's, the original design that Mercedes have, and you will notice there is a vast difference between the two. And I think this is something Lewis might be pushing for, but there will be an additional issue with this. And this is of course all to do with the budget constraints as a result of the budget cap. Now, I don't know if steering wheels would fall under a budget cap, but I presume that they do. So that may then have an issue of only being able to adjust the buttons and the layout of the design on there for Lewis. I don't think they would be able to completely redesign a whole steering wheel specifically for him. But let's see what happens on that aspect. And then of course, another hugely important thing that they will be going through on that first day is meeting all the head designers and engineers for all of the departments within the 2025 Ferrari project. And this will of course cover absolutely everything to do with the 25 car, from the chassis, from the suspension settings, from the levels of downforce that they produce, the targets that they'd set for themselves, whether they've hit the targets or not. And then of course this will then kind of naturally evolve within the conversation of a couple of hours into what the first half of the year is looking like with regards to upgrades. Now of course some of those could potentially already have been penciled in because they might not have reached their targets during the winter period, and so they're having to make these upgrades come from maybe the first couple of races or towards the end of the first half. Then of course they have the issue of not being able to foresee certain problems with the car until it hits the track with both drivers and they come back to the team with feedback. And this of course will be coming from the handling characteristics and the way the car feels and handles and behaves for both drivers. And these will be things that no engineer will be able to perfectly predict in terms of having an understanding of what it will be, even from a simulation standpoint. Because of course Hamilton will also be getting his first taste of the Ferrari sim, and they cannot compute every single factor that the real world has into the digital world, and so certain aspects they will be able to get a understanding of, like the base setup from which to go to Bahrain and to all of the races from which the 25 season will be campaigned. So yeah, that will be another thing Hamilton will be getting to grips on, and that will be the first very small inkling and understanding of the differences between the W15 and of course the latest 2025 Ferrari car. And I'm sure there's going to be a huge vast array of information that he will want to relay to his engineers and to the team as a whole, from the strengths and weaknesses of both of these cars up against one another. And of course he probably will drive the 24 car as well in the sim to get a correlation in terms of the improvement from 24 to 25. But yeah, hope you've all enjoyed the video. I'm going to wrap things up here as we've covered everything really that we need to here. If you've enjoyed it, which I hope that you have, do of course leave a like on the video, and of course comments with regards to this in the comment section down below, and turn on notifications and subscribe if you're new. Right everyone, I will catch you all later on in the week with some more Formula 1 videos.